Florida. Those are Miami colors. Good afternoon, everyone. Everyone, can y'all hear me? Okay, good. We'll call this April 26, 2018 meeting of Mayor and Council for the purpose of a work session to order. And ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you've had a chance to look at the agenda. I know there were some items added as late as last night, so this morning even. Okay, so you have before you the agenda. Tab A is approval of minutes, and I would just as always ask that you read the minutes between now and next Tuesday. If you have any changes in those, please get with our city clerk and have her make those changes so that we can approve those next Tuesday night. Tab B is community development. Bobby Elliott.
Can I, do you want to amend the agenda now, or not?
We can amend the agenda, but let me make just a broad statement about that. I know we've added items as late as this morning now, I'm finding out, and I'm okay with that, but I would just encourage everyone, especially our department heads, to get those in on time, because when those are published and they're put on the website, then the citizens have a chance to decide whether they want to come to the meetings or not. So when we add things at the last minute, that kind of throws that into a tailspin.
Mayor, none of those were department head items.
Or city managers.
Well, I just wanted to add an item for discussion, and it is on the city manager evaluation, and we can put it wherever you want to, or I can just wait and bring it up when we're done.
Let's add it, actually we can make it, we're the governing body, so we can make it A2.
Okay.
Are we really going to do his evaluation in public? Nope. Oh, okay. Anything else added? Okay. If not, again, read the minutes and get those to the city clerk if there are any changes. Tab B, we have Mr. Elliott up there, so please proceed, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I have tab CU-01-18. It's a conditional use application for 105 Glanton Street. The applicants are Connie Wood and Cindy Tolbert of Villa Rica, Georgia. They're requesting a conditional use for property located at 105 Glanton Street in land lot 160 of the 6th District in Carroll County for the purpose of a pet grooming and kennel.
Well, Mr. Mayor, this item has not been before planning and zoning, is that correct?
That is correct.
And I would like to defer discussion on this until after planning and zoning has looked at it. I think their meeting is Monday night.
Yes, sir. That's
Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm correct, there was a change in the meeting because
The Times Georgian failed to run our legal ad on time.
okay, so to meet the legal requirements, we had to reschedule our P&Z meeting. I concur with Councilman McDougal's assertion. I would think this is a matter of routine. It needs to always go before P&Z before it comes to the council.
That would have been my only question. Is that the way it would have proceeded had the meeting occurred?
Yes.
Okay.
So
It is still going to come up, though, on Tuesday, and planning and zoning will have met on Monday.
I think my concern is, why would we discuss it here tonight prior to them having discussed it and then made a recommendation to the council?
No need that you have to do so, but all you're doing is deferring your discussion until next Tuesday night at the meeting itself, which is fine.
We do a lot of that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Danny.
item number 2.
Item number 2, Mr. Mayor, we recently discovered that in July of 2017, when the Tanner Hospital expansion came in for permitting, they paid for 2 6-inch water meters. They only have one, so they paid us $120,000, and we really need to refund 60 of that back to them.
Can we just keep it?
Good faith.
Then I think we should give it
He
back.
is kidding. He's kidding.
I'm gonna ask the obvious question. How does that happen?
Mr. Mayor, at that time, we were in extreme transition. Even our permitting clerk hadn't, NYRE had not even started until August of 17. So I don't know. I don't know how it happened. But they have a 6-inch meter and they have a 6-inch double detector check fire line apparatus, but they only have one tap. It serves all of it. And unless they just saw the two 6-inch things on the plan and jumped to that conclusion, I don't know. But it was a mistake.
And then the follow-up to that is, do we have a system in place now that would keep that from happening?
Well, yes, sir. I'm afraid I'm the one now that's in charge of looking at that. So,
You are the system.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions?
I just have one question, but it's not this. Sorry, this seems to be a no-brainer. My question was, when I was going through my link of everything that was on the agenda, I didn't have this.
Yeah, it wasn't in the,
Okay,
she just, I think,
okay, all right.
We don't have any data in the system to
This
even
is
look
the
at.
first I saw of it, okay,
There's nothing but a cover sheet.
okay.
We don't have that.
I don't find it controversial at all.
It showed up.
any other questions or comments?
It's in there, though.
Item number 3?
Mr. Mayor, number 3 is an item for discussion on your agenda. It's an annexation tab.
Bobby, has this been before planning and zoning?
No.
Is it going before planning and zoning on Monday?
Typically, annexations don't go before the planning commission.
Okay,
The
I'm
zoning
just
portion
asking.
does.
All right, this is just the annexation part.
Yes, this is just annexation for
right.
discussion.
Thank you, go ahead.
Ronald F. Dupree, Villa Rica, Georgia, requests an annexation for property located at Pool Road and West Tyson Road in land lot 142 of the 2nd District in Douglas County. The property consists of a total of 34.72 acres and is located in Ward 5. The applicant's intentions are to build a residential subdivision development with a total of 76 units. And I was advised to present it and turn it over to our city attorney for discussion.
Yeah, the submission of this annexation request has opened up a interesting new issue for the city on 3 fronts, really. There's been some miscommunication. Many people who've contacted me have been asking, about the city initiating this annexation request. And it's important to note that the city did not initiate it. The city received a request from a property owner outside the city limits to be annexed into the city and to have his property rezoned if it was annexed. There are really 3 issues that come into play as a result of this annexation request. And I'm going to make a presentation, a brief presentation as to what those are. I'm going to urge the council at this point in time not to have a whole lot of discussion about it at this juncture. I think based on what I'm getting ready to tell you, you'll understand that there are some legal ramifications that could result, could relate to pending or potential legal issues that we ought to discuss in an executive session initially. The 3 issues that I think this annexation request presents to us on a legal front. First, as you may be aware, the Villa Rica City Council in 2007 entered into an agreement with Douglas County that established some service zones, and that was a part of an overall negotiation related to service delivery and a water contract between Villa Rica and the Douglas WSA. That agreement may be some question as to its validity now, but it is at least does exist, and that needs to be addressed as to whether or not that presents a problem for this annexation request. Second legal issue that this request presents is with regard to service delivery. We do have an existing service delivery agreement with Douglas County that was last updated in 2014, I believe. And in that service delivery agreement, there are some provisions that this annexation would affect, so that perhaps a triggering of the renegotiation of the service delivery agreement would be caused by this annexation request. And then third and finally, there is a specific provision in the Georgia Code that relates to disputed annexation issues. The City of Villa Rica, when we received the request, placed Douglas County on notice that the annexation request had been received, as we are required to do. The city has received back an objection from Douglas County Board of Commissioners, an objection to the annexation request, and that triggers a mechanism under the code whereby there is a mediation and arbitration session to attempt to resolve it. And that provision states, excuse me, that no final action can be taken on the annexation until that plays itself out. So under any set of circumstances, you are not going to be voting this coming Tuesday on either the approval or denial of the annexation until that arbitration process is completed. So those are the three issues pending. I would like to talk to the council in executive session next Tuesday about that. Between now and then, I am going to be consulting with, I think we may have received in some notices from the Department of Community Affairs today that I haven't seen yet. We'll be talking also with the people at Douglas County who filed the objection, and also hope to speak to the applicant to see if we can come up with some organized way to handle this in the most efficient and economical process for everybody. So I just don't know that there's a lot of discussion we need to have today on it, but I at least want you to be aware that this is not just a routine run-of-the-mill annexation request that we would traditionally handle. It presents a unique, a specialized situation that has not occurred much in Georgia.
This is not a discussion item, but David, I just want to ask a question. We do have a time limit, so we are going to be able to meet that time limit with
Oh, yeah.
DCA.
Sure.
Okay.
We're not going to let any time deadlines pass us by.
Okay. All right. Based on David's comments, I would move that we just move on to item number 4.
I agree.
Mr. Mayor, this is my favorite item. I think Mayor and Council's had a printed doorstop, paperweight volume of the draft development regulations. I know now for over a month. And we've also had this posted on our website for over a month. The utility construction guidelines in place that we were operating under right now are dated 2004. And I can't tell you what has changed in the environmental area in the last 14 years. This document here is one of two that we're headed toward. Our goal is to have this for all development regulations as they pertain to our specifications, what we require to put in the ground, how our roads are built, curbs, everything, how our floodplains managed, all that stuff. There's 12 sections in here, and in your packet, I told Tom I was going to try to boil my summary down to 2 pages, and it's just impossible to do that, and it makes sense. But the second manual that we're going for next will be our zoning code. It needs to be upgraded along with a new map, sign ordinance, landscape ordinance. The UDC that we have right now is a unified code that tries to pile all this stuff under one cover. And the current UDC is grossly deficient in several areas. We uncover questions from potential developers almost weekly, where we have one section of the code says you can, this section says you can't. So this is the first piece. I've been working on this since I got here in Villa Rica. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. It's a pretty substantial code book.
Bobby, I just want to say kudos. I have read through it, and even I picked some things up about asphalt. That's a very comprehensive document, and I know you have spent a lot of time and effort on that, as has your staff, and kudos for doing that. That's something that we've needed for a long time. It's hard to maintain and grow a city when you really don't have the rules to tell developers when they come in what our rules are. We really didn't have any So,
Mr. Mayor, we've been very deficient to, and I don't want to piggyback on Tom's comments that he's made in the last couple of meetings, but you know, not only the materials that you install, but the fact that you have somebody inspecting those as they go in the ground, which we have not had consistent methods doing that in the past. We're hoping that this is the first step to get all that corrected.
other comments? Okay, thank you, sir. Tab C, Sarah Hefty.
That woman again, we'll cycle back to this.
Oh, I'm sorry. My mistake. How did y'all let me get by the entire tab B before you pointed it out?
Well, we're sitting here dwelling on it, wondering.
Dwelling on it? Okay, let me go back to tab A2, which was added, and my apologies to Councilman McDougal. City manager evaluation.
So I was just going to bring up that we've been talking about this for a while, and I submitted a proposed evaluation
It's just,
plan back in February. I said it was edited a little bit by our Human Resources Director, I think some small changes. I sent you all a new copy of it on Friday, and I thought we would discuss here if we wanted to use that copy and move forward. The procedure actually calls for us individually to do the one I sent you, and then there is a group one that we would do together in executive session. How y'all want to do that, I mean, is entirely up for discussion. That's just my proposal.
And I looked at it, I'm probably one of the few that hasn't completed it yet, but I do like it, and I like the idea of us doing it individually and then collectively as a group too, so I hope that, well, I'll let everybody else weigh in on it.
yeah, I think it's time to move on it. We've been working on that since Milltown.
Since we're supposed to have done this between October 1st and November 30th, it may be time to do something.
Yeah, I say we go with it, personally.
I'm not saying that, I'm just saying it's time to do something.
Well, if we do something, we got to figure out what it is, so we have something for us to use.
You evaluate your way and I'll evaluate mine.
All right.
Anybody else?
I'm ready to go with whatever we have. The only reason I thought we held off at all is because it had been the only sample we had seen. And being that we hadn't done this in the past, I thought maybe I should look at some other options. That didn't happen. We didn't get any other options, but we got some tweaking, right? I only saw a couple questions on there. I think it was just a few, maybe it's 3, that I didn't feel I could adequately answer from a council position. If I worked at City Hall, maybe I could, watching the daily activities. So my only question will be upon completing it, because I haven't done that yet. I was waiting to see what we were going to do. What do I do with those questions? Are they going to mess up the score or just make a notation out to the side? Because I imagine it's going to be tabulated on numbers.
Maybe we could discuss that in executive session when we do the group and decide if we want to change it a little bit.
Okay.
I don't think you sent those to me. So
No, I didn't.
To me, I couldn't think of them differently. Okay.
I mean, way back, probably a couple months ago, I mentioned about a few of them, but I don't think I told you number 2 and number 6 or anything like that.
So let me push this thing forward. So when does everybody feel like we can have those in so that we can move this forward?
You haven't completed that. We hadn't even agreed on using it. That's what we got to agree on, and then set a date to complete it. That's the way I see it. We're sitting here talking about different ones, but we never got another. I mean, Gil has been the one wrote and issued. Now, that's a good deal. Somebody has to do it.
I'm agreed.
Let me
I'll
just
have
ask this.
mine
Would
done
it be something where you all would like to maybe send me back whatever you tweaks you might want me to do, and I'll have it ready again by Tuesday. And then Tuesday we'll set a plan for the executive session. We'd have it finished by the executive session. That sound appropriate?
I think we're talking about approving the evaluation form and then setting the date to turn them in.
Next Tuesday. We're not going to vote on it today, but
Just if any concerns, send those to me after this meeting sometime over the weekend. By
Okay.
Tuesday, I'll have something, and then we'll vote on using that and set at that time the executive session, which will be the time we'll have them completed.
any other comments or suggestions?
We have a plan.
Okay. Now, Sarah?
Oh, you can't lose your title of queen of the PowerPoints. We may have to go back to the king of the PowerPoints back there.
Sorry.
Okay.
I did an abbreviated version of the monthly financial update. That one. All right, this is your financial update for March of 2018. You'll go on to the next tab. Like I said, this is just a few of the items that I'll talk about on Tuesday night. First is our business activity year to date. So I just cleaned it up just to show total revenue and total expense. So from 2017 to 2018 in water and sewer, our net loss has gone from over $500,000 to $330,000 loss, which is a 36% improvement from last year. Obviously, this is 2 months into our rate increase, so that is a large part of it, but also we have much higher taps this year, tap revenue than we had last year. Expenditures seem to be on par with our budget. So it's the revenue changes that we're seeing that are causing this difference. Part of this expenditure number is the depreciation. So this loss that we're seeing here is actually not a cash loss, it's because of depreciation. All right, sanitation and solid waste. From 17 to 18, we do see a slightly larger loss between the 2 years, but 2018 includes more personnel because during this budget cycle, we were able to align the personnel as they should be. So several employees were taken out of the street department and the general fund and put in the solid waste fund, which is where they're actually doing the work. So again, even though it's a slightly larger loss, it includes more personnel and higher tipping fees. So I'm pleased with that number.
Double the tipping, or almost double, right?
Yes, almost double the tipping fees. All right, next slide. Wanted to just give an update on the low income senior discount that we have. The numbers that were on your sheet as of last week were different than this, but we ran an update yesterday. I was hoping to see a higher percentage, but it's actually less than I reported in last week's figures, if you saw that. So as of last year, we had 670 qualified senior discounted customers. As of yesterday, we've received 294 applications, and of those, 255 qualified. So of our previously qualified, that's 38%. We have 22 that have applied whose income is still too high compared to the $30,150 limit. And we have 17 applications that are still partially completed. Any questions on that? All right. And lastly, just wanted to give another update on our self-funded insurance. So we have been self-funded now for 6 months at the end of March. So the left column is United Healthcare. These would have been the checks we wrote to United Healthcare last year. And whether we actually spent that money or not on claims, they actually kept that money in their bank account. The middle column is the self-funded portion that we have paid. So we're only paying actual claims now for doctors, prescriptions, and we have some administrative costs that goes into that. So the difference there is almost $200,000 that we've saved in 6 months compared to what we paid last year. Questions
Wow.
on that?
I got a question overall. The last one you presented about the seniors showed 38, yet what we got in our booklet shows 44%, so this ain't jiving with that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. The report we ran last week, I don't know where that number came from that gave us the 44%. I was actually really hopeful about that.
We don't even have this presentation in our booklet, so I don't. So,
The PowerPoint?
yeah. I'd like to take a look at things we're going to see in advance, so if I have a question, because it's hard to grab a question when you're just skimming through it.
Okay. Yeah, I ran an update on those senior numbers yesterday because I was hoping it would be even higher than the 44% that I presented in the actual packet, but that was incorrect. So it's the 38% that's correct.
And again, we had discussed the last meeting that rather than Sarah do a complete financial update at the work session and at the council meeting, that the in-depth one will be at the council meeting next Tuesday, so that everybody will have a chance, the citizens and others to. Tom?
I totally agree with that, but I would like to see the presentations that she's got.
Yeah, this was not in reference to your question. I was
Yeah.
making a statement. Tom?
Charlie, question. Are we using the Waste Industries transfer station any? All right, so That's 42 a ton. Right, so the comment that we've made over and over since October is that the tipping fees went way up, but that was at the Douglasville landfill. They went from what, 32 or 34 to 60? So we have found a place that we can do some of the work for at 42 a ton, but they're more meticulous about what they'll take, and that requires separation sometimes, which isn't practical. So we are doing some of the hauling at 42 a ton, which is helping.
And how far is that? Where is it located? Does it work for us that way?
It's right before you get to Highway 5 on the right, when you're going 78 east.
Next to the pit, gravel pit.
Anyway, we are trying to do something to reduce that impact, but I mean, it's still significant. It's still a third increase at least, so.
Tom, since we're beginning the budget season, have we communicated with Douglas County to see if they intend to go up on our tipping fees next year? Can we do that?
Not yet, we can, yes.
Okay.
Harley, have you gotten any end of that? Right.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, item number 2.
All right. This is amendment to the ordinance providing for the better collection and administration of hotel motel tax. So this ordinance was adopted March 6th. Since it was adopted, though, we have been advised that we need to make some changes to be in compliance with state law. So you should have the ordinance, the amendment, excuse me. So 2 things we had to put back into our ordinance. The first one being an extension. Although I don't like the idea of it, we do have to provide an extension to the hotels to pay their hotel tax. And the second portion is we have to allow them to deduct 3% of the tax they collect for kind of an administrative fee on their side. So we had modified that language in our ordinance to similar to the sales tax, where you take 3% of the first 2,500 tax, right? And then anything above that was a percent and a half. So,
Did I understand the state says that we have to give them an extension?
yes,
And they say we have to give them 3%,
correct.
and we raised it from 5% to 8%, then the raise goes to them.
No, it's a different 3%.
The total tax.
Not 3% of the hotel revenue.
Okay.
We were trying to be more aggressive than the state. I mean, we didn't know it at the time, but we were trying to be more aggressive. But the state statute is pretty clear, and all we've done is just modeled it based on the state statute.
So this is my question, and I know this happens because they do it at the Capitol. They pass something, and then they find out in that case, a lot of times it has unintended consequences, and they go back and tweak it. When we do our ordinances and draw them up, how do we run it by state law so that maybe we don't have to come back and do something to it a month later?
Most of the time, I do check it out. This is one that I just didn't catch, and
I mean, I know there's a million laws.
in all honesty, we were relying on somebody who we thought knew what they were talking about and recommended that we make this change, and that it turned out to be incorrect.
I see. Okay,
I
thank
did
you.
call the consultants that we're using and asked about that extension, and he said in all his time, he's known of a time or two that somebody's had to extend this extension to someone, so.
Okay.
I don't think we're in any risk of it becoming abused, I hope.
Okay, and I didn't want that to come across as though I was trying to lay blame on, why didn't you get this right the first time? Because I do realize there's laws, they change all the time, there's a lot of them on the books, but I just thought it was, I don't know. It's been a month and we're already having to tweak it, but I'm okay
Is this to be repaid
if this makes it right.
for each month, or is it done by the year?
We collect it monthly
I know about,
They deduct it.
they deducted, okay.
as part of their submission to us. They take out 3% of it.
Tom?
Yeah, Sarah, tell them about the difference in the receipt since we went to the audit.
I can't remember the exact numbers, but we are receiving significantly more hotel tax than we were before we started the audit.
Give me a ball, significant, give me a,
Wasn't one of them 160% increase or something?
Wow. So,
We have one provider that's never submitted hotel tax, and lo and behold, they did owe some tax, so they're submitting now.
so is it ignorance or cheating? Or both?
Probably both.
We'll give them a little grace that there might have been some ignorance. But none, okay.
160% difference, roughly.
That was on one of them, but not all of them were doing that. But
So the
Some
fact
more
that we're
than-
paying a company to do this for us, even though initially we're paying, then I guess we're going to decide after a year what we're going to do. It'll probably pay for itself, more than pay for itself.
So I was looking at 2017 this past week because of our audit. On average, we were receiving between $11,000, $15,000 a month in hotel tax. This past month, I received $24,000. So
What'd that cost us? $1,000?
it was a few thousand, I think.
And the only thing that's changed is we're doing an audit. Is that,
Correct.
Good job. Any other questions or comments? Item number 3?
Right, this is our annual renewal for our property and liability insurance. We got a quote back from GIRMA, which is the Georgia Interlocal Risk Management Agency. It's actually less than last year. The amount is, where is it? $216,730, which is about $3,000 less than last year. So we submit a list of all of our vehicles, all of the equipment, all of the buildings that we have in the city. We answer a few questions, and they send us back the quote for this. So this is within our budget, and we'll make 4 equal payments to GIRMA.
Are the terms the same?
Yes.
how much was it last year?
$219,325.
Charlie, this is probably a question for you, but I know when I work for the city, do they still go around and check all our facilities and note things that they feel like are safety issues that we need to address? Okay.
When you,
We have some too.
when you say facilities, does that include our playground equipment, or is that our job?
That's everything in every facility that we have.
And they go how often? Okay, so once a year. Do we have anybody on staff that, I'm just thinking playground equipment only because I'm aware of some things that have happened years past in school situations, that sort of thing. Anybody that kind of keeps an eye on that?
That would be a Vicky Coleman question, but I'm not sure we need to.
Okay.
We could
okay.
probably, if you want to add that, we can add that for discussion.
Just answer me after, I'll be good.
Any other questions on this GIRMA agreement? Okay, item number 4.
This is a SPLOST update for all of our capital projects for the years 2018 to 2023. So what started the ball rolling is that I got a call from the Douglasville Finance Director asking if I had calculated what I was going to owe Douglas County for our fire portion of our SPLOST. And anyway, I had to refer to the SPLOST IGA to see what she was talking about. And we do owe Douglas County 13.82% of this SPLOST that we have from 2016. So that's roughly, it's just shy of $1 million that we owe back from our SPLOST revenue back to Douglas County for any fire or EMS capital. So this was not included in our SPLOST, well, included in our capital project list that we had done with the 2018 budget. So that kind of threw those SPLOST projects out the window. We had to start over. So we met, the city manager and I met with the department heads to discuss what projects that we had looked at last, I don't know, August, when we started the 2018 budget, see if those were still relevant, where they stood, see if they applied to this SPLOST. And so we basically looked at 08 SPLOST, 15 SPLOST, and 16 SPLOST to see what projects we needed to do. Also, our capital budget from 2018 didn't really look at the cash flow for SPLOST. So we might say we're going to get $6 to $7 million of SPLOST over 6 years. but the cash flow only comes, $100,000 a month or so. So we took that into consideration as well. And basically, your new, well, if you want to move to this, Elisa, we can look at the actual project list.
I want to ask a question about that. So we didn't budget for that number that was that goes back to Douglas County to pay for fire services, not
Correct.
animal control, fire services,
Fire
which is one
capital.
fire station, the fire station on Tyson Road.
Correct. We budgeted for the fire operating expense we have to pay to Douglas County, but we hadn't budgeted for this capital portion.
So we're going to pay, what was the number, $1 million?
Just shy of $1 million.
Up to, if they don't spend it, we don't send it back, right?
That is correct, but we've already been invoiced twice in 2018, and we've already sent them $74,011, so.
Okay, so in future budget years, two comments. Future budget years, we're going to include that, because this is going to be an every year expense.
Correct.
All right.
Potentially.
The chart you're showing now.
Well, the
is that where
potential,
they-
I think, will cover my second question.
If they don't incur any capital expense, as I understand it, there's not a reimbursement.
Correct.
Because it
Oh.
is a reimbursement, not a payment.
Oh,
When They
okay.
invoice us, they're showing exactly what they're spending it on, and then they're just allocating portion of it to Villarica.
Okay, so this is not an additional fee that we pay to Douglas County for fire services. This is to buy equipment
Trucks and- Yes,
Capital.
for that station or for just fire services in general?
that part I don't know.
I think it's for fire services in Douglas County in general.
Okay, but it's not an every year expense that we need to budget. But how would we know?
Oh, that's my
I
question.
mean, potentially it could be every year.
Yeah.
What is
It's
this,
pretty safe that we're gonna give them
Yeah.
all the money back.
this is an estimate we're seeing on the list here.
That is the maximum amount you see on the list, $157,000 a year for 6 years. So it's a total of $944,182.
I'm going to have to ask the question, because if I don't, I'm going to bust a gut. So we have no idea how much they're going to ask us for every year. It's just based on them saying, hey, this is how much we need in capital expenses this year for our fire department, and then they send us an invoice.
Correct. So we've budgeted the full amount.
We know what the max is.
But they have to spend it before we have to pay for it.
Correct.
Do we get a receipt?
So we have a max, though. Is this part of the SDS from 2014, David?
Yeah, it is incorporated into that, yes. I think it was actually a part of the SPLOST agreement between the county and the cities when we agreed to have the SPLOST vote, but I'm sure it is incorporated into the SDS.
Okay, you had a good question. Do we get copies of the receipts on what they spent?
The invoice tells me what they spend it on and shows me what the Villarica portion is.
See, actually, the last SDS agreement preceded the SPLOST agreement, but it was incorporated into the SPLOST agreement between the Douglas County and all the Douglas County cities that we would contribute this sum to the, back to the county. Because if you remember, this is the first time we've really ever received any money from Douglas County SPLOST. It was considered to be a good step forward that we got anything.
And I agree with that, but what happens since it's not a payment, then is it safe to assume if a SPLOST referendum does not pass in Douglas County that has equipment specific to the fire department that we would not be billed for that?
Yeah, I mean, the SPLOST has already been passed. I mean.
No, I'm
it
talking
was
about
voted-
future SPLOST.
It just depends on what the agreement is at that time.
The language that governs this is the SPLOST IGA. That's the document that the Douglas County employee calls Sarah about. So that's where it spells out what percentage of the Douglas SPLOST goes to transportation, what goes to public safety, and that language that we're talking about this was in that document.
Right, I understand that. I guess my question is, this SPLOST that we're under for Douglas County right now started in when?
It was voted on November 2016, and we started receiving the money in the fall of 2017.
So it will expire in 2020.
It's 6 years.
It's a 6 year
so-
fall.
6 years,
23.
right. So, you know, maybe this isn't a question that any of us know, but my question, I guess, what I'm leading to is, so then when the SPOS referendum comes back up for a vote in Douglas County, if it should fail, and I'm not saying it should, I'm just saying if it should fail, then will we receive an invoice from Douglas County for fire services?
No. I mean, we shouldn't, because part of our agreement was all based on the SPOS. I suspect we'll have to have some sort of new agreement.
Does this one expire at the end of the SPOS?
Yes.
I think you've asked a really good question.
Thank you.
So we do,
Every now and then, you know.
we do receive an invoice for fire services, the operating side.
Say that again?
That's
We
my
receive
question.
an invoice for the operating side of the fire services. That's separate from this.
That's the intergovernmental agreement. That's what I didn't, that's separate from SPOST.
Right.
We pay that
we've
because
paid
that's,
for years.
yeah. And the intergovernmental agreement isn't just about us coming to an agreement with them. It's about they legally can charge it. So even if we didn't wanted to negotiate it differently, they can charge us for the animal control. They can charge us for fire service.
Right. The operating piece of fire, we pay,
We pay that no matter what because of the intergovernmental agreement.
Okay, I get that. I just, you know, relative to SPOS, I just wanted to know how that worked. And, you know, I don't want to steal Councilman McDougal's, what he's probably over there thinking about right now, but, you know, I know that there have been a few issues with responses from Douglas County to some of our residents in that portion of the county, so, of Villa Rica. Do you want to speak to that, or?
Well, as I have said before, I'm going to get some more information on exactly what we're getting for our money over there. I've had a number of calls from constituents, and I want to take a look at it. He just asked Alyssa to send me a copy of the IGA. He's going to send it to all of us. I want to understand what that agreement says and what we're paying for and what we can expect. But no, I don't think I want to dwell on it too much here, but it is
Okay.
something I'm going to be looking at.
Thank you, sir.
Is your mic on? I'm not hearing it come over here.
Says it's on.
Oh, I heard that, yeah. I mean, I could hear you, but it didn't sound like it was coming over the sound system, so I didn't know if you were getting picked up on the video.
I think that's really important. In every meeting we've had since I've been here, we've talked about that, and I understand we're doing something about it finally.
It's on this list.
are?
Courtroom AV, is that it?
yes.
We had one projector out today, if y'all can't see it, but there's one of the oh, it did get, it's going? So see how quick things can change? It wasn't working, is working, wasn't working. Okay. Any other questions for Sarah? Thank you, Sarah. Tab D, Human Resources, Stephanie Rooks.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Hi.
This afternoon, I'm bringing to you 3 items. The first is a recommendation for a vendor for our salary study that we have been talking about for about 1.5 years. We have interviewed 4 companies. We had 4 proposals to our responses to our RFP. We have spoken with each company. We have checked references on the top 2, and we're prepared to offer a recommendation for Evergreen Solutions. If you remember the salary study, the purpose of it is to make sure that our job descriptions are up to date and that our employees are compensated competitively in the market so we don't lose them to our surrounding cities. I'd like to introduce to you Nancy Barkley. She is a consultant from Evergreen Solutions to give you an overview of what they are proposing and what the end result will be.
On the RFP, Evergreen Solutions, they bid 29.5, discounted at 27,435, says that they're willing to negotiate. What does that mean? We can go lower?
Pardon?
It says willing to negotiate.
That was
mean
one of the comments that I got from one of my
the one you're recommending?
counterparts that I
Yeah.
spoke to within the state. They said that they will negotiate. They offered this discount within the proposal itself.
Okay. Good afternoon. Nancy Berkeley with Evergreen Solutions. Just take a few moments. Again, I don't have a presentation. Maybe just highlight a couple of key areas again in your asking for and then hopefully us providing to you this compensation classification study. This is what I would refer to, and I would be the project manager as well. This is what I refer to, or we refer to as full classification and compensation study. So it would be looking at both the classification system itself, and involved in that is something we have called internal equity, eventually producing updated job descriptions, which I know is key to you as well, and then conducting both salary and benefit surveys with peer organizations and comparing that again, and then making recommendations as a result of that. The study's done really in a couple of different phases. Some of these are done consecutively, but it's done where we have a meeting, have introduction meeting, set a timetable, talk about the study, of course, itself, the key elements that are important to you, talk a little bit about compensation philosophy, which will be key to you as well, because that defines a lot of things that govern our recommendations back to you. Where do you want to be in the market? Most clients want to be at least competitive, but there's some discussion there. For example, some other key things of how do you progress salaries? How do you want to progress salaries? And maybe how you are progressing them, how you want to progress salaries in the future. That has an effect actually on our recommendations as well. So what we do, and we pride ourselves with Evergreen Solutions, is providing very specific, not just cookie cutter recommendations to you. But to go back to we set up, timeline, working with the project team, which I would imagine Stephanie would be key to that project team. Here, set up the goals of the study. Of course, we go through our methodology, which we presented in the proposal, which is, again, looking at internal equity. We ask all employees to complete something called a job assessment tool, which is effectively almost like having them complete an online web-based survey, which is what the job is. Why is that important? Because we don't want to just make assumptions on a job title or what we think it may be, or your current job description, which we just talked about briefly, may not be up to date. And in some areas, and you definitely would probably have this situation sometimes, there are jobs that are what I call them, this is not an official common class term, combination jobs.
We make them up.
Or they're made up.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Again, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I call it a combination job because everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say that. And we have to analyze that, and we used a methodology of compensable factor scoring to analyze what those jobs are, so that when we're getting information from the market, they may not have that exact combination job. We can then take that market data with values associated with that, it's data analysis, and marry the two together. I'm oversimplifying this, but marry those two together to come up with the correct recommendations, for the city. So again, analyze internal equity. That's collecting the information from the employees. The supervisors review that, analyzing all of that information, conducting salary and benefit surveys. And every step of the way, this is not something we go off and do in a vacuum. We converse with the project team here. These are the right peers. This is what we recommend. These are the right peers. Or there's some key areas that you might think you might have some difficulty in attracting and retaining individuals, or you are experiencing that now, where you want to make sure that we benchmark or survey that position in the market, and we do that. But at any rate, we'll conduct a salary survey, and we'll conduct a benefit survey as well, get that information, analyze that. Again, as I call it, marry the two together, voila. And then make recommendations back to you, which, again, what have to do with back to that compensation philosophy. Do you want to be competitive? Do you want to be slightly more than competitive? Many considerations. What type of pay plan design? And we'll offer our suggestions, certainly best practices, look at what the peers are doing, and additionally then make recommendations regarding your pay practices. Maybe you want to have them more flexible or more concrete, whichever the case may be, and as well ultimately make recommendations for how to take the current employee salaries and place them in a either new or revised pay plan. And that's where that's important of how do you progress salaries? How do you want to progress salaries? Because we don't want to make recommendations that are what I call counter to. You want to make them either, and in line with that pay progression method, or at least neutral to it. So we make those recommendations, cost those, have discussion. Again, it may be, okay, that's a cost we can't afford. Can we phase that? All of those things come into that conversation about in our recommendations phase of the study. But again, that's a pretty high level of our. And other things we've done in Georgia, we do quite a bit of work in Georgia. We are currently working with the city of Douglasville, finishing a study with Douglas County, working with finishing a really more of a job description type of study, internal equity type of study with the Water Sewer Authority. This is just local, city of Chamblee. I could go on and on with many places here in Georgia, so very familiar.
Timeline. How long will it take you
I
to?
believe we proposed probably 3 months, 4 months.
Yeah, it said July or August.
July or August.
I think that's what it said.
We may, July, August. The things, again, and I mentioned before, I
Yeah.
said it, and you wouldn't have noticed necessarily purposefully. If you're on a tighter timeline or what have you, if you have, we're really interested in, most clients are just, when can we get some idea of what that would cost us? We try to speed up, if you will, do the salary survey at the same time. We can do it concurrently at the same time that we're doing what we call the internal equity piece, which is asking employees to complete that JAT. So there are some things, but each one of those itself process takes about 3 weeks. So you've got these 3 weeks chunks of getting data and then analyzing it, and then us marrying it together and turning it back to you. So it's just, we can tighten up the timeline sometimes, and sometimes a client will say, just take your time, we want to get get everything right. So it's.
Well, I don't want to take our time out. The reason I ask is because I just want to make sure it coincides with the budget year. Because, having seen, in 38 years, having seen 39 of these, they're good if they're used, but if they just sit on the shelf and nobody puts them into place and nobody funds them year after year after year, then it's a waste of taxpayer money. So I hope this council, if we're bought into this and we get it back and we like what we see, I hope we fund it in the next budget cycle, and then I hope we continue to fund it every year until we catch up. Any other comments or questions?
I have a confession to make. I did not read all 162 pages of this proposal, and I tend to do that. But unfortunately, we had about 4 things on the agenda that were hundreds of pages. And so what I did is I tried to skim and go to certain things, go down and see what your other clients had said, some of the comments from the other clients. My question is this: sometimes we get a reputation, or maybe in the past some, about being cheap. There's a difference between being cheap and fiscally responsible. So when you are doing this evaluation, I don't really know which one to ask y'all. When you're doing this and looking at being competitive, I know things that have come up in the past would be like, what you pay somebody, it should matter what the cost of living is in that area too. For instance, there's some areas you need to pay people more because they can't even afford to live there. Of course, in some cases they don't, like New York. Do they have a firefighter or a cop that lives there? No. They all have to drive in because they can't afford it. And I've lived in areas where it got too high for the people that needed to be your teachers to live there. So do y'all take that, I'm assuming you take that into consideration, or say our medical benefits are really stellar compared to some of our competition, we might adjust our pay scale because of the fact that we have really good benefits. Does that all play into your decision, or how you come up?
Play into the recommendations? Absolutely. So cost of living differentials, we automatically adjust. We can for cost of living differentials. So that's part of the data analysis that we do. We have a cost of living factor. So absolutely. So you're what we call I call it normalizing those salaries that we collect from a higher cost of living or a lower cost of living, whichever. So it's basically equal to here. Yes. So we do adjust that data. We can show it to you adjusted or not adjusted, but we always recommend adjusting it. So yes. And the second one was, what was the second one?
Benefits,
Yes.
whether, like, police officers, it might be take-home cars. For all of them, it might be that we offer a better insurance package than someone else, or whatever.
Yes, and that does come up. However, I'm going to say this. Generally speaking, you'll find, or will find, when conducting a benefits survey, that most public sector, when you're comparing to public sector, okay, taking the private sector, which is very different out of that mix for the moment, generally speaking, you'll find a percentage of benefits to total compensation is within the 30% range. And that they all are 32, 31, and then you start breaking down somebody, has this and somebody doesn't have that. They have a higher deductible, but they don't pay as much for their insurance, whatever the case may be. So we'll show you all of that in that comparison. Does it make a vast difference in, so we want to be competitive, but we think our benefits are superior to most of our peers. If they absolutely are, and you're attracting people because of that or something like that, and I'm going to say this like this, it's not that often, because normally there's one that's a little better here, a little different here, something like that. But if it does come into play, and we have had a client, actually it was a Georgia client, where that did come into play, the benefits were significantly higher in an area, was a significant attractor. And I'm talking public sector to public sector. They had told me that they wanted to be slightly ahead of the market. And I said, but your benefits are already here, and they were going to reduce these significantly. They probably still will reduce them over time. But they were going to make a significant reduction in benefits to bring those salaries up. And I said, well, why don't we talk a little bit more about not being so competitive now and balancing that out. So we did have that discussion about how to approach that. So that's absolutely, those are, again, the discussions. And when I mentioned there's nothing done in a vacuum, that is a true statement. We're like, here's the data, here's what we recommend, but let's talk. We can phase things if you can't, all of those things are very, very much a part.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Item number 2, personnel handbook, policy handbook.
Okay, the policy handbook that we're presenting has quite a number of changes in it. This is basically to give you an idea and give you an opportunity to read through it and make any suggestions, recommendations, and we'll move it to the June agenda for a vote. So again, you can have this for review this time, and then we'll talk about it again in June.
Questions, comments? Not. Thank you, Stephanie.
Then you have the summary plan document for the health plan. Okay, this again is very involved. What this plan does is it gives you exactly what is covered by the health plan, your deductibles, your co-pays, your RX coverage, what's covered and how much, to what degree it's covered. Like your preventative is covered at 100%. Your many things are covered at 80% once you reach your deductibles. What's subject to a deductible, what's not. And it's got the HIPAA language in the back, talking about HealthScope and their responsibilities as it applies to HIPAA. So this one we do need to get a vote on this month because we've been operating our health plan without a plan summary document for 6 months. We've just been going off of what we did have with United Healthcare, because that's what they mirrored into the plan. This has changed a few things. It's been tweaked several times. I think this is version 9. So
Is there a change in our benefits at all to the employees? Nothing's changed.
It's just explaining it.
yes, in detail.
Questions, comments? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Tab E, Public Works.
Our wastewater manager, Dean Ziegler, will be giving this presentation.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
What we have here is a proposal to employ professional services to provide an evaluation of the mechanical and electrical controls on the condition of the lift station in an effort to help us develop an asset and management approach to our preventative maintenance for those. As it stands now, the current situation out there is bleak. There's a lot of stations that are in need of attention. And with the turnaround in the maintenance department, we don't have the manpower right now to completely go through, smoke through the problems and figure out where we stand. What's actually there now isn't representative of the plans and drawings that we have. So along with getting a jump start on the preventive maintenance and developing that asset management plan, we will receive some training from this as well, from this company. So staff recommendation is to authorize Goforth Williamson out of Griffin, Georgia, to complete the professional service of the maintenance of lift stations for the $16,275. Again, the proposed preventive maintenance work will get us in the right direction and figure out the status of where we stand out there with those lift stations, what is actually in the hole in some of those lift stations, get us some training on those, and so we can move forward.
Is this the only company that bid?
No, sir. I put proposals out. I got 4 proposals. They weren't the highest. The highest was 18 something with some other language in there that I didn't particularly care for. The lowest was 13, a brand new company, 3-4 months old. So we went with Goforth Williams that had done work with us in the past, and I believe we're doing some work with the water plant right now too. So I make a motion to authorize Goforth Williams to move forward with that.
Okay, we don't vote tonight, but I think we do have I'll have some questions for you. So we have a total of 32 lift stations in the city, and those lift stations pump sewage from the low parts of the city so that we can treat it at our treatment plant. So as it stands right now, if one of those lift stations go down, we have SCADA, which supposedly we have equipment, some kind of system in place where staff is alerted that those lift stations have gone down. Am I correct so far?
Yeah, there's some issues there that need buttoned up with some of the SCADA stuff. But yeah, we will get a high level alarm.
Right.
Hopefully at that point it's not too late.
And that was my question. So now there are some systems, if some of those lift stations go down, there could be a period of time before we're notified that there's the problem with that lift station.
There's some time bought into the, unless we're in a 3-4 inch downpour rain. We've got, with some of the I&I that we have, when an alarm comes in, we've got time to get there and get them dressed. We are, with the current work that you all authorized at Edge Road, we're back up to full strength. There's at least 2 pumps in every hole now. But the condition of some of the other ones is the big question mark, and that's kind of what we're trying to get ahead of, so we don't have the big dollar catastrophic fails, that we can, as we go, start identifying those and prevent those.
And
it's still going to happen.
Just for those that might not know, a lot of these lift stations we inherited. The city didn't build these. We took over a subdivision, and what we did, we inherited the lift station that was there. And I've heard Councilman Best and Marchman for years and years say, when we get these new pumps, are we trying to standardize these so we have pretty much the same pump, so we know how to work on it if we can work on it, or at least we have standbys, we can take them apart, salvage the parts that we need. Is that something that this company is also going to do?
I don't know, to be able to standardize some of them at this point. I don't know that. I mean, that's
Can we work that direction?
That would take some time and money to redo a station. And hopefully with some of the zoning stuff we've got more control when the subdivision comes in, and we can say, these are our specs, this is what we want, versus kind of what we got out there now.
Bobby, you want
to
add something to that? You raised your hand. Thank you, sir.
So that's good news. So, yeah, the more, and there's some controls out there, and moving forward, we're going to try to budget that in, because like I said, they're kind of all over the map right now, or if we've got a station that at least the majority of them are this set type style of controls, then we'll be much better or able to address those issues.
And the cost of one fine to EPD would far exceed the cost of this maintenance contract.
Oh, yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So there's three things that we're trying to marry here, and you approved one of them at the last meeting. That was when we hired Brennan to come in and do an engineering evaluation of all the lift stations to tell us what's the total capacity and the available capacity. We also tasked him in that contract to oversee this work. So these guys are doing the mechanical piece. They're physically going to pull the pumps out of the well. Okay, there's basically a hole in the ground, right, and the pumps are in there, and you have to pull them out with a crane or a winch or whatever. So he's going to oversee that process because they're going to analyze the condition of the pumps mechanically. So there's a controls issue, there's a mechanical issue, there's an engineering issue. We're blending all those in these two contracts. In addition, Dean has two guys working for him that do maintenance, and they're both brand spanking new to us.
One of them hasn't even started yet.
Right.
He
So
starts
the other guy has what, 25 years experience though, or 20 or
He's
something.
he's our lead operator. He's not.
I'm thinking about the maintenance guy.
Yeah, on the PM side of things.
Right.
Yeah.
What's his
He's
experience? 20 years.
20 plus years with Cobb County doing PMs on lift
Right.
stations.
So one of the things that they don't bring to the job is knowledge of our specific 32 lift stations. Where are they? What kind of shape are they in? How close are they to capacity? So now just the timing of this is such that those two guys will get up to speed, not just on what they don't know technically about that whole world, but us specifically. So we're going to spend $100,000 on this, right? You know, 80 and 16, almost 100 G's, plus the time of the two guys. But at the end of this, we should know everything we need to know about all the lift stations, and our two maintenance guys should be up to speed on where everything is, what kind of shape it's in, and have a better idea of the maintenance that they can do to keep them running well. So how long? 3 months from now
Yeah.
for all of this? We're going to have leapfrogged ahead in what we know about that part of our system, whereas today it's just a catch as catch can as far as what we know.
Other questions or comments?
You have the confidence of these two people that you've hired that they will be able to take over the maintenance on our lift stations after this bunch leaves?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, thank you, sir. Item number 2.
Hold on a second.
Oh,
Bobby.
stop.
Bobby, are we trying to go to flight pumps for these?
They are all new
Flight.
pump station equipment like
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I have a barrage of things here on 10 o'clock last night items. First two would be asking to get some input and approval, hopefully, on construction of dumpster pads to waste industry standards, one for the new library and one at the old library. These would be a concrete base with a 8-foot brick walls, slatted gates. They're built to what specification should be so that the weight of the front tires doesn't destroy the parking lots.
Was this bid out?
This was not bid out. This is from our construction guy that does all of our concrete work and has for 10 or 12 years now for us. And he's doing this at a cost plus with the materials. It's a pretty tight number on what we went over together at length. He and I and Tom met on these, and we've got several jobs for him to do here in town, and it would just be it's a fair price for what needs to be done. It's quite a deal. The concrete has to be 6 inches deep. It's got to be a higher PSI than normal. And there's some pretty detailed specifications to meet what needs to be done.
I want to just mention the retaining wall, just for those of you that may not know what this is. This is the retaining wall at the Hillcrest Cemetery, correct?
Yes, sir. This is we're going to have to remove a couple of trees, take the fence down that's there.
But I was going to touch on the need for the retaining wall. For those of you that may not know, this is the retaining wall between the city property, which is Hillcrest Cemetery, and Woodall Dentistry. And that, our part, has actually caved in and encroached into his property in some cases. And so, you know, the implications of what could happen with a graveyard washing away into the neighbor's yard, I don't have to elaborate too much more on that, but I think this is something that's been needed for a long time. So
we've looked at it several times, and it's really past time to get something done with it.
It says cost plus. If you estimate 20,000, it do not exceed limit.
Well, I don't think we can put a not to exceed on that because there's a lot of variables that we won't know until we get down. When that fence comes down and what's left of some of those walls are there, it could be extensive on brickwork.
Open-ended.
questions or comments?
I guess my comments or question actually is, Charlie, Bobby, maybe it's be you. What's the difference in cost of one of these cement pads and the asphalt that's under them now?
I assume you're referring to the dumpster pad?
Yes, sir.
The dumpsters sit concrete versus asphalt. Obviously, concrete's much stronger, and it will last pretty much forever. We have a question about some of the paving quality at the new library at the area of the dumpster pad, to be able to support the dumpster pad, and rather than take a chance.
There isn't a dumpster yet.
Yeah,
There isn't.
rather the location where we're looking at doing it, rather than take a chance on that, we recommend going ahead and making it permanent on the beginning.
What's the cost of those two pads?
49,000.
Am I reading that right?
24.5.
24 and a half
not to
plus
exceed
24 and a half.
24.5 each, I think.
Yes, sir. That's
So $49,000?
49,000.
well, the pad is not just for the concrete pad; it's for the enclosure and everything that goes with it.
Are we going to see the enclosure? Because I think I'm thinking the same way you are, but I don't know concrete, okay, and the cost. I just looked at it and go, wow. Basically, for us to have the dumpster we want, we're talking 25,000. Okay, I'm just rounding it off. I realize that that's what I'd kind of like to see that enclosure, I think. Do we have a picture of?
The enclosure will be built out of the same split-faced masonry product that the library is currently built, and that's why it's so costly. The three sides of the enclosure, and then you have gates on the front. The three sides of the enclosure will be made out of split-faced block to match the library, where it won't look
Yeah.
ugly.
I understand that especially at the new library. I don't know where the placement is over here at the old one. At the new one, you're going to come straight down the driveway. It's going to be the first thing you see. So I know we want
Yes.
it not looking crappy. I'm sorry. Not looking crappy from the front. The cost just still amazes me.
But the one at the old library,
about
the old library is just a brick library, so.
Well, I think the intent on the old library was to match that brick as closely as possible on the surround.
Where's the dumpster at the old library?
It's going to be in this back corner here.
It's sitting out it's been sitting out in the parking lot for 20 years. And it looks like it too.
The very southwest corner of that parking lot is the best place that dumpster where the truck can get to it without disrupting any of the
We've
parking.
already done some demolition of landscaping there, so we've taken down some old trees, put in sod, taken down some shrubbery. So this is the next step in just preparing the site for the day that we wind up over there.
Yeah, the reason these are so costly is we went high-end with the surrounds to match both places, to where they won't look like a standard chain link fence that you see at some restaurants that you can see through, and everything else that goes along with it.
Which if it's in the back, you don't really care about a lot of times if it's in back.
Yeah, but both of these, especially the new library, and even this one, it's gonna be right in everybody's face.
Okay, getting back to my question. You just told me that the old library's probably been there 20 years, and at least 20, 25, could be even 30. And the asphalt's not going away. And the only thing my question is, why are we going to pay $50,000 for a cement pad and some fence to go around a dumpster when we see what's happening at the old library? It may be moved. I can understand that totally. But that seems to be a whole lot of money for looking good when you're going to throw garbage in it. It don't make sense. You know, put the dang thing over there where it's supposed to be, and if people don't want to look at it, let them look at the library. And the same way over to this old library. You know, it seems like somebody told me today, we seem to be getting a lot of money into our buckets and then opening the window and throwing it out. And this to me is throwing money out the window. Sorry, it's well filled.
Is there anything that can be bordered in gravel, or that doesn't work? But it has been put on asphalt.
It has been.
I know we're a little concerned about the asphalt over at the new library, not necessarily at the old. Okay.
More so there because the biggest damage comes when those trucks have to turn when they're backing up out of there, and they will have to get out of the new library. That's where the asphalt damage will come from.
Wait a minute, we're only putting the concrete underneath the dumpster, aren't we?
No, this will actually project
come
out
out
4 foot in front of
Yeah.
the gate so that when they are lifting the dumpster, that the weight of the truck is on the concrete, not on the asphalt. And then the dumpster will be let back down on the ground. There's some steel bars behind it so that it doesn't keep pushing back and end up damaging the fence. And so when they do that, the weight's off of it, they back out 4 foot off of the concrete, then they're on the asphalt with just the weight of the truck. But you put all that weight 12 foot out in front of a truck, it puts an awful lot of weight on that front axle. And that's what's going to end up hurting the parking lot, particularly at the new library.
Is there a breakdown on this proposal? I'm sorry, I just forgot. I actually was looking at this, I think about midnight. It may have come in after 10, but I saw it.
Going back to Councilman Best's comment, this is significantly an aesthetic recommendation. So if it's not the council's desire, then we can operate just like we're operating. So this is not primarily an operational issue. This is an effort to start moving us toward making the place more attractive.
As the dumpster at the old library, is it sitting out in the open?
Correct. It's just sitting out in the parking lot.
We could still put a fence around it with slats and all that.
I'm more friendly toward the one at the new library. I'm more friendly there, and I know Tanner has a concern about it looking nice too,
We could do
because
one or the other and not both also.
And it also helps control illegal dumping too. That's another thing, because with an 8 foot fence around it, you know, people aren't coming out there in the middle of the night filling them up with us. We
but
have
they
no
don't care if
problem
it's
with that.
pretty or not.
No, they don't care if it's pretty or not, but
Okay.
it does help secure it and make it safer.
And I can tell you, being in the asphalt industry, the first thing I look at when I look at a property, when a property owner calls me, is where the dumpster. I ask where the dumpster is, because that's where the damage is going to be. And that's because just the process of picking a 1,000+ pound dumpster up with a truck, elevating it in the air, and then bouncing the dumpster causes weight to be distributed on that asphalt. And asphalt is not designed to withstand that kind of weight on it. Gravel won't work because then you're going to rut it out, and that's going to hold water, and that's going to attract mosquitoes. This is the way that most professional buildings are designed, with concrete pads that extend beyond the dumpster, to allow the front wheels of the dumpster truck to sit on that so that you don't have that action. The concrete block wall around it is purely aesthetic, but I would also add that it also, like you said, kind of discourages folks from using the dumpster, which they do in every park that we've got in the system, or they used to. I assume they still do. And then also rodents and other animals that would get into the dumpster, so that, you know, just it is aesthetic. It's not, you know, we can put a dumpster in on the grass if we want to do that, but, you know, long term, it's going to have consequences.
Well, I'm inclined to agree with this layout for the new library for a number of reasons. I think that building probably, and that's the very first thing you'll see, but I think the fact that you're putting something that's long term there, it's worth spending the money for that. If you put up some of the other type of fencing, it usually deteriorates over a few years and you have a mess out there. I'm a little less convinced on the one over the new library, or the old library, I'm sorry. And I'm not sure that anything needs to be done over there right now, especially when we really don't even have a use for the place at this moment.
Nobody
Certainly
lives
we
there.
haven't endorsed a use for it. So that's my thoughts.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, item number 3.
Next one is to the final phase of finishing up West Wilson Street, which will be the addition of 8 traffic islands to try to stop the one-way traffic from going the wrong one way. And it'll be 8 concrete barriers 6 inches high, be on both sides of the road.
Can you repeat that?
Be 8
Both sides of the road.
both sides of the road, so that the traffic will funnel up through the middle and be guided. The barriers will be in line with where the parking on both sides ends, so it will direct the cars directly up through where they need to be going.
That means we're going to lose those pretty things we have over there right now, but
Absolutely.
you know they're working. They're better.
No, they're really not.
Oh, they aren't.
We were
Okay.
out there measuring yesterday, and in 2 hours we were out there, I think we still had about 6 cars coming up the wrong ways.
Okay, so, well, now, but then we'll have
We could
some
put in those spikes,
in the
ain't
middle
in
of the
that.
island.
They will be in the middle of the island.
I have a question about the islands. The cover sheet, I believe the cover sheet under the motion said there was 4, and then I read another thing. What you just said, it said 8.
There's 4 streets involved, but there will be one on each corner at each intersection, so there will be a total of 8 islands. Yes, ma'am.
But why don't the one way go all the way to 78 or Bankhead instead of just stopping right here and then you got I just wondered.
That would be above my pay grade.
You know, it looks like you go right here and then you spread out, you know. Why don't you let it go all the way to the end?
All over his pay grade.
Oh, okay.
Miss Shirley, when they did the reverse angle parking, they set the one way up that way,
Mhm.
and I didn't even look at that, the west end of that, keeping it one way all the way out. We just kept it 2-way.
Yeah.
Now we can certainly look at that.
Well, I don't know, but I
Council
somebody
wishes
bring
to
it
do
up.
so.
It would make sense to me, you
I
know,
don't know if it
instead
does.
of and then to just go all the way to the end. I mean, that's just a question. I'm just
Well, it's certainly not something that we need to wait on to evaluate. We can go ahead with what we're talking about doing, you know, and get that done, but we can look at that for sure.
I guess the only, if I lived on Westview, on this end of Westview, that would be a problem, because then I would have to either enter, if I was coming from the east, I'd have to go all the way into town and come down West Wilson, or I would have to go past it and come all the way up Westview. So if you lived on that side of Westview,
Oh, you can turn
It's
left
not
right
right
there
there
by
at the
the
traffic light.
traffic light and come across. You wouldn't be going opposite.
or either
Right.
turn out there or either get off out
We
there
can look
where
at
the
that.
fog is
Yeah, that's true.
and come around.
We'll take a look at that.
The only problem right now is with the railroad interchange we've been looking at, it's going to intersect with Wilson. And if it's one way coming toward that,
We make T in that intersection.
yeah, it wouldn't be T.
It would not work.
We can still look at it and just
We need to
kind
look at our railroad
of hold
crossing
back on it
with-
until we figure out what we're gonna do with the other.
If it's truly 8 islands, then the cover sheet needs to be changed from saying
So-
4 islands.
Make it one way, it's gonna be squirrely.
Yeah, that was my understanding.
Over that.
On both ends of both blocks.
That says
Yes.
8.
It's just gonna be another way to funnel the traffic to where,
Are we gonna paint those yellow or
at least.
Yellow, neon, orange.
They'll have
gold, I'm sorry,
storm drainage
purple and gold?
and then them all.
Paint them,
Yeah, there is some drainage issues that will be addressed in this, and that's part of the cost. A lot of the drainage is gonna have to be allowed to go between these and the curbs that are there, which that's all been figured out. And this will also include 2 handicap ramps on that, ADA compliant.
They're
handicap
doing
ramps
demo,
to get in there
demo and that.
and hauling it out. But this will be a good professional job, and I have a lot of confidence in this guy doing this job and getting it right the first time. And we can put West Wilson behind us for a while.
If anybody goes the wrong way after this, I'm sorry, it's because they want to.
They're gonna have to put some effort into it.
They
after
want
this.
to.
We just fire the
They
police
just
chief.
don't care. That's when it's time to get a ticket. Because it's not safe. It's really dangerous over there right now with those people going the wrong way.
Evening.
This will be a good solution to it.
But they really need to get a ticket.
He didn't say ticket.
any other comments or questions before we get too giddy up here? Thank you, Charlie. You feel better?
Right.
Good. Tab F, Parks and Recreation, Vicki Coleman.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The item that is before you is really for informational purposes. We just kind of wanted to give you an update on the library and really our reimbursement, if you will, so you have an understanding of what the total costs were. Oh, it went out. So we have actually received, GERMA has already reimbursed us, if you will, for our the damages that occurred. We have we submitted as part of this the proof of loss form, which is included as an attachment, which just kind of summarizes the just over $34,000 worth of damage that was inside the building. And keep in mind, of course, it doesn't include what you ended up approving last month. So you have a full summary of what that total amount was. But we just wanted to put that on for informational purposes. I don't believe that we've received the check, that you really have to take any action on it. I didn't know if you had any other questions. The work actually should be starting. I don't know if he actually came and picked up the check, the contractor, the initial deposit before this meeting started, but they should be starting, if not tomorrow, then on Monday.
Any comments, questions?
Yeah, who tore the sidewalk up out there in front of the flag at Goldust?
Oh, that's a separate item. So to answer that question, we were in the process of getting our roof replaced, and the company that was lifting the equipment onto the roof and the heavy materials, it was the heavy equipment that damaged the sidewalk. They came over the weekend and fixed where the damage was from the heavy equipment.
Yeah, they seem to have they cut cement with a cement cutter, and there was at least 15 to 20 people raising Cain about the cement dust on their cars. They chose a person out there looking for his grandson to play baseball and chose the time to come gripe about it. I wish they would have been able to come out there on Monday through Friday during the day when not a whole lot of people were there. But
Any other questions on the library, proof of library issue? Item number 2, Recreation Advisory Committee appointment consideration.
This next item that is before you is an application that we have for Mr., I think many of you are familiar with him, but Mr. Alan Martinez. His application is in the packet. Certainly he has experience with coaching and actually multiple sports. But in addition to that, I think that certainly there are other boards that he's on as part of this, part of his other community work that I think will be able to give us some great guidance in terms of where and how we may be able to grow and also improve, and even maybe bring in some additional funding. So I think it's a great value that this particular applicant would be able to add as well.
Mr. Martinez was a member of the Billerica Sports Council when I was the recreation director there. Very active. Where do we stand, since we're talking about this one, where do we stand on the appointment of the rest of the members?
So I do have a couple of other candidates that I'm still in continued conversation. Some are interested in volunteering. It's just their concern of what that level of commitment and bringing them to a point that this is not going to maybe disrupt some of the other things that they're interested in doing. So they're certainly interested, but I'm just having some continued conversation with them.
You're not interviewing the volunteers, though. That's what that sounds like.
You said, am I interviewing?
Yeah, as far as their commitment's concerned, and
Well, we're sitting down and we're talking about some of the things that we're interested in doing, so they understand the direction that we're going, some of the things that we're looking to get from them, so they have a full understanding. So myself, they're meeting with some of the other staff members. I don't want it to be a surprise to anyone, what they may be walking into. So I think that's helpful for.
so when do you think you'll have that board filled?
I'm hoping here very soon. I want to make sure that I can really just kind of get their full buy-in.
I would love to see them in place before the budget, because
Okay.
I want the advisory commission to be a part of the budget process and look at your budget before you submit it. Not because you need to take direction from them, but
Right.
just I want them, to, since they're from the community, to have buy-in. So I would certainly, I am one voice, but my voice would be that you would have those persons in place and have a meeting set up before the budget process, before the budget's submitted to the council.
Okay.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you, ma'am. Tab G, item number 1, Jim Chambers. Nice vest you got on there. I know you took a little ribbon, but
This agenda item is for server SAN replacement for our current server infrastructure. It's for a virtual server SAN solution that would give us a clustered failover environment. Currently, we have all of our systems running on physical standalone servers with no redundancy. If we were to lose a drive on any server, get hit with malware, ransomware, it would impact us for possibly 2 weeks, depending on whether it was a couple drives, a backplane, or ransomware itself. This solution would give us the ability to restore from backup, and we'd be down minutes or maybe just hours.
okay, we had our second ransomware in Georgia, that I know of anyway, this week in a smaller city. So, did they not have these backup servers?
I can attest to what their infrastructure was like.
what
When I'm learning more and more from municipalities as far as their backups, they're making the mistake of having their backup solution actually on the domain. So if the backup solution's on the domain, it's using domain credentials. So once it gets hit or you have an intruder come in, well, they're wiping out the backups. I know that's what they did in LaGrange. They were in for 2 weeks before LaGrange knew what happened. So the first thing that they did is they wiped out all their backups. Then they started doing damage. Our backup solution is not on the domain, and it's an actual appliance. It's pretty solid as far as security goes. And then we're also replicated 2 other times in the cloud with Barracuda itself. The reason it took LaGrange so long to recover, Atlanta so long to recover is because their on-premise solution was hit, and pulling that much data down from the cloud, well, it takes weeks. It takes a long time. But with our Barracuda solution, if push came to shove and it was going to take that long, they would actually send us a drive and we would upload it right here locally. But with it being an appliance, it's very unlikely to get hit because we're not using domain credentials to access it.
You want him to put that in English?
I mean, the cloud is nothing more than another server somewhere. It's just a computer.
It's a
Yeah.
data center in either Ashburn, Virginia.
We
Atlanta,
call it a
Georgia.
cloud, but it's just a computer sitting in a data
It's
center.
a big room of servers.
Yeah.
Correct. And basically what this is giving us a couple blades inside of a server and then a SAN. And a SAN is nothing more than a box with a bunch of hard drives in it so that we can create virtual servers that if, say, our Bremen Colo facility was to go down, we would actually be able to just fail right over to our PD is where we would make our failover site. And you wouldn't even notice the server went down in Bremen because it would just spin right up here in the PD and you would see a little blip and then it'd be right up.
But the backup servers, they're going to be our own backup servers, or?
Yes, sir. We have a backup server that's actually on premise, but it's going to be moving to our Colo facility in Bremen.
Was this a budgeted item?
Yes, sir.
What was the budget?
150, and I came in at 131 with a solution from Technology Integration Group.
And this doesn't include the email
Archiver knows.
thing that we talked about. That's another 15 or something.
It'll be less than that.
Time frame for having this installed if we approve it.
Get it ordered some point next week. If it's approved, we should have it installed mid-June.
Okay.
It's paid for out of the Carroll County SPLOST. 08 SPLOST.
Any other questions?
Most of the stuff's over my head, but I know how important it is. Because I've
This
seen
is
too
very
much
important.
in news and articles and things I read of what happens if you're not protected.
Because at this point, if we were to go down due to a hardware failure or something like that, all the press is going to see is the alert got hit with malware. Even if we didn't get hit with malware, oh, their systems were down for a week, 2 weeks. That's what the rumor is going to be. So this is very important to have our uptime at a maximum.
Other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, sir. Tab H, Tom Barber, our city manager.
All right, we have a couple of items to talk about that we added in the last day or so. The first one is how we move forward, how you want me to move forward with the request by Gaston Outdoor Advertising to handle the GDOT certification form. So we've talked this through at the staff level, and I've talked with several of you individually. The city attorney has weighed in on a number of emails about whether he believes that we have the basis for signing the certification. And so this is how I would present to you that you make the decision. So the certification says to GDOT that the applicant who has requested from them to remove some trees, which they will allow but require that the sign be lowered. What we're certifying to GDOT is that we have a law that prevents the sign from being lowered. And if we do that, then GDOT is going to allow the trees to be removed without lowering the sign. So the way that I'm thinking about this is we have a lease for this sign. We own the property and the sign is on our property that runs out in February of 19. So if the intent of the council is to not renew that lease, then the certification question is moot. In other words, if we're not going to renew the lease, then there's no point in certifying this law that restricts the sign from being lowered, because the sign's going to come down, so there's no sense in lowering the trees, removing the trees. If on the other hand, if the council is interested in a new lease, then there would be no reason to not approve the certification unless you felt like it was improper. Because if we agree to a new lease but we don't do the certification, then the applicant is stuck between either removing the trees but having to to lower the sign but not being able to, so he'd have to leave the trees up. So we'd have a new lease on a sign that you couldn't see, right? So to me, the decision isn't the certification, the decision is the lease. If you want to move forward with a new lease and the city attorney and the council are okay with the certification, then we go that way. If you don't want to do the new lease, then we're done. Right, so that's how I am seeing the decision. So which way you want to go with that, it's up to you, and we'll do whatever you want to do.
Okay, on the staff recommendation, did you agree to that?
That was my recommendation.
The city does?
Right, so this is how I think about that. So part of my responsibility is to enforce ordinances. And the ordinance right now that governs this sign has been violated. But the ordinance was put in place after the sign was built, so it's considered legally non-conforming. So it doesn't meet the current ordinance, but it's a legal use because it happened before the ordinance was put in place. So from my perspective, if my job is to enforce ordinances and I have an opportunity to come to you and remove a non-conforming use, then that's my responsibility. Does that make sense? It's not my job to protect a non-conforming use, because my job is to enforce the ordinance. So whether you want to enforce the ordinance is up to you, but I don't think I have an option. That's just my take on it. Now David's
I want to hear.
phone, so he's thinking about whether what I just said is really accurate or not, but that's just how I view my responsibility.
No, I think you stated it accurately, what your responsibilities are, and I think that was a very legitimate position to take. And, I've tried to think through this, and it's part of a broader problem that we have with the sign ordinance as a whole, in that, and I've raised this to you several times, all of the signs out on I-20 are probably legally non-conforming signs at this point in time, every one of them. And because of the nature of our sign ordinance, really, the I-20 corridor is built out on billboards because we have a restriction both in distance between each other and the number that can be in each quadrant of an interstate interchange. And I don't know this for sure because I haven't gone out and counted, but I suspect that we are built out on signs on the interstate, and probably every one of them is a legally non-conforming sign, because the height restriction that we have in our ordinance right now is, I doubt that there are any other local governments that have a height restriction on the interstate at 50 feet. I don't know that for sure, but that's a low height restriction for an interstate billboard. It'd be just based on your common sense of driving around here. So I think that if you are going to have billboards out on I-20, that we do need to revisit the ordinance. That doesn't resolve this particular issue, but I'd be remiss in saying that this is the first step in what's going to be a probably recurring scenario as we go through time out there, because if every single sign is a legally non-conforming use, we'll face some sort of question every time somebody wants to do something with one of those signs.
And I think what Tom said is exactly right. His responsibility, if we have someone come in with a change in the design of whatever it is, then it's his responsibility to comply, the new sign or house or whatever it is, fence, to comply with the ordinance that's written. The problem is, and you stated it, is that we really don't have one specific to billboards on I-20, correct?
Correct.
So we need to take that into account, I think, as a council, that maybe we need to look at that. Surely there's someone else that has something like that, because I can't imagine asking anyone that has a billboard on I-20 to build it 40 foot high. I'm not a big fan of billboards personally, but that's not reasonable to expect someone to build one that you can't see over the trees on the interstate. So maybe that's something we look at. Doesn't really, like you said, it doesn't really have much relevance on this, except that we do, what is it, $450 a month that we get from this billboard out there, and I don't think there's any other use for that land that I can think of. So
If this billboard is taken down at the end of the lease, nobody else is going to be able to put one up there.
and we lose $450 a month.
Correct.
Well,
That's not,
so we've exchanged several emails on this, and you point out exactly a lot of what you just said, which is that this is going to be a recurring theme that keeps coming back. And you've also pointed out that we need to take a look at this sign ordinance, and I agree with that. But what you've also said is that we don't have any regulations about those signs on I-20, specific to I-20.
Not specific to I-20, because there's nothing specific to I-20, the general ordinance applies to it.
But we could create something
Sure, we
specific
could
for
create-
that. We did for Highway 61.
For Highway 61 and Highway 78, we have created specific corridors with, specific rules for those corridors, but we don't have anything for the I-20 corridor.
So in my thinking, sending this back to community development, I thought they would go in, take a look at it, and read this and think, we really can't sign this document because there's an integrity problem, in my view. And they would come up with some kind of recommendation for us to try to help this applicant, because certainly nobody wants to harm the applicant. So the question for me is about whether or not we sign or direct someone to sign this form. And I think that the language in the form, to me, is very clear that we don't have a current local law, ordinance, or regulation that prevents him from lowering the sign. So it makes it very hard for me to direct somebody to do that. Now, he has a non-conforming use, but that is not a law, ordinance, or regulation, as I see it, that applies to the whole city. That's something that applies to him specifically, or to this billboard specifically. And I don't think that's what the question is. But help me understand, do laws, ordinances, and regulations apply to everyone?
Yes.
Our general ordinance
Yeah,
is carrying out there because we haven't done something.
And that's what the question is.
Right. The 4 points that I think originally Lenise prepared it, but she did a good job of that. And there are 4 reasons why he's a non-conformant. His sign is a non-conforming use. And if we fixed one of those by, requiring that the height be reduced, and he fixed that and lowered it down to 50 feet, he cannot do that because our ordinance is very clear that, if you make any changes to a sign, it has to be brought completely into conformance. And so that lowering it so it complies with the height requirement, he's still going to be in violation for 3 other reasons that he has no ability to change. And that general ordinance of not changing your sign unless you bring it into conformity, it's a catch-22. He can't come into compliance.
But I think to Tom's point, what we're doing is aiding someone in maintaining a non-conforming use as opposed to bringing it into conformity.
You are.
It's exactly what.
You would be doing that,
and we would be assisting someone to maintain a non-conforming use.
You would be, and because the reason why any type of ordinances is created, everybody calls that grandfathering, that
Right.
grandfathered in. The whole purpose of non-conforming use and grandfathering is that, through the passage of time, you're trying to make everything come back into accordance with the ordinance. And that makes perfect sense if what the city really wants to do is to make every billboard on I-20 less than 50 feet tall.
I think we ought to look at the sign ordinance. But I don't think we ought to go around our own ordinances before doing that. I think that's what we should have done. I think that's the proper procedure here, rather than direct or authorize someone to sign this form. I asked Bobby earlier do we allow mobile homes, new mobile homes into the city of Villa Rica? The answer is no, and I thought the answer was no. If someone asked us, do you have an ordinance or law or regulation that prevents you from putting a mobile home, a new mobile home in the city of Villa Rica, the answer would be no. It wouldn't be, well, let me go and ask the city council if we do. So I think that if this form was so easy to sign, it should have been signed without ever coming to the council. I think it's contrary to what our laws, ordinances, and regulations actually say. And that's why we're being asked to direct from the city council someone to sign this document.
So is it reasonable, to Tom's point, I think that's an important question, is do we want to continue with the contract? Because all things considered, if the applicant didn't want to cut the trees on I-20, then everything would still continue. The rears have been paid, so he would continue to pay the $450, correct? So that's a question that the council needs to decide whether we want to continue with this agreement or redo the agreement and look at it, because, I can't speak for the applicant. He's in the room right now, but if he were given the choice to continue with this billboard like he is, and rather than lose it at the expense of this letter not being signed, he may choose to do that. I'm not sure. I can't speak for him.
Can I speak to the lease? Because I know you said that's the first thing we need to do. Called about 4 of y'all today, right? And the cart's before the horse. That's part of what Gil's saying, that we need to really go back and look at a lot of this. But so I try to look at it to protect the city in certain ways. We want to enforce our ordinances, and yet we want to be business friendly. And okay, so let's go back in history. In 2000, we had a city manager who worked with the applicant, and it wouldn't matter who the applicant was, applicant A or whatever, to put up a very expensive structure on city property. And we've made some mistakes in the past with maybe everything hasn't been written out like it should. Some things are verbal, whether it's all be here forever or what. Okay, so in 2000, expensive structure goes up. Between 2009 and 13, was that the tourism made an agreement with the applicant to use a side of it to advertise. Had the applicant, at that time, I think, to do that, the applicant needed to build a bridge and a road, investing more money to access city property. The ordinance is at 50, our ordinance is 50 feet, the state is 75, the state's requirement out on State Road is 75 feet, but it wouldn't meet that either. So if we don't renew the lease, I almost feel like we pull the rug out from under people, because it is still Villa Rica that made these agreements to do this, and then we say, well, now you got to take it down. And I don't know if that's 25,000 or what it is. That's a number that I heard that was thrown out there. We can make some money off the lease by renting it. I don't see that we're going to be putting anything else on that property, so it doesn't have maybe a super benefit, but it can have some money-making ability for us. I just hate to see, because we've made mistakes in the past, that we do stuff to business people that just cost them thousands and thousands of dollars.
Ms. Macklin, what's legally we supposed to do? I mean, we got this grandfather clock grandfather clause I've never seen where that was a legal thing, but is that a legal something or something we've done for all this time? And what legally should we do as a council? Since you're out.
Our ordinance creates a status of non-conforming use. I mean, the ordinance itself says if the sign was there before the ordinance changed, it can stay there. And back when the sign was first put up, it met all the requirements of the ordinance, because quite frankly, our ordinance was really nearly non-existent back then, so you could put up a lot of things. Over time, we've gotten in complaints about billboards in town. Nobody wants any more billboards essentially in town. We've never really ever had any gripes or complaints about the billboards on I-20. I guess everybody's just gotten so used to it that nobody has thought about that. I think that's probably why there's not an I-20 corridor provision in the existing ordinances, because just nobody ever complained about those, and it wasn't a big topic of issue. Your question, I'm getting missing your question. You're asking me for, what you legally have to do, and it's within the discretion of the council to decide. I'm not going to make a legal decision for you because it's not really a legal decision to make. You can decide, I believe it is legal for you to decide that because of the circumstances, the city manager is authorized to sign off on the form that allows him to get the trees cut down. But you don't have to do that. And therefore, as much as y'all might want me to tell you got to do one thing or the other, it is your decision to make. Several of you have made the point that we need to go back and address the ordinance, and I urge us to do that. Many of you were on the council when the sign issue last came up in March of 2016, and we voted in a new sign ordinance to address a few other problems that we've got with the sign ordinance. That got vetoed. That veto didn't get overridden, so those problems that existed in the sign ordinance, unrelated to this, but they still exist.
I didn't say you did.
You looked at me.
No, I did.
A question. Short answer to your question, Councilwoman Marchman, is y'all have to make a policy decision and do what you think is right.
It'll all be legal, because if it were illegal, he'd make sure to get on us, right? You'd make sure we didn't do anything
I
illegal.
wouldn't tell you, to let you do something that was illegal, but
Well, that's what I was
I think
getting to.
either choice would be a legal choice.
Okay.
And the issue of restrictions, the federal highway on interstates, they have a set of rules that you must follow there.
Right.
Our rules can be more restrictive, but not less restrictive than those rules.
Correct.
Do we know what those rules are from the federal highway?
I know it to the extent that the signs that are out there right now do meet the federal requirements. They are in compliance. My belief is that they are in compliance with any federal or state laws related to billboards.
That's including the one we're talking about.
Okay,
Federal may be different. The last I recall is that the state it was 75 feet, and some are above 75. That's the best recollection I have from a couple of years ago when we did it in 16. But I'm not going to swear on that because I probably heard it, didn't read it in an actual,
Well, that's
legislation.
the state requirement for cutting trees, yes, but I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe that's it.
I don't know if they can be taller.
that's it.
Yeah, but I think that to cut trees in front of them, they're supposed to be brought down to 75 feet.
Leslie, I pulled the 2016 revision today and read it, and it raised the maximum height from 50, what we've got now, to 75. Is what that recommendation was back in 2016.
let me bring in on the staff thing here. I think the first motion, of course, is we do not enter into the agreement. The second motion authorized city manager to sign the GDOT certification document. I think that one needs to be also included. Authorizes the city manager to enter into a new agreement based on staff recommendations. So I would like to see the second motion expanded a little bit.
Well, the staff recommendation is not to continue in the lease.
No,
The lease
Strike
expires.
the first line, and if the city does not enter into a new, if the city does enter into a new agreement, staff recommends that they do such and such. Strike the first line. And that's Tom's agreement.
I'm just reading here. Staff recommends that due to the nonconformity of the existing sign that the city not enter into a new lease agreement, making the certification decision moot, period.
Right.
Then there's another one, if you decide to do something different.
I said strike the first line.
But the agreement ends next February anyway. I personally have no issues with renewing the agreement, coming up with a new agreement, but I don't like the agreement that exists now. So if that was going to happen, I would want to make sure that was renegotiated.
Right.
Somebody
I think that ought to be added to the second motion because I think he is grandfathered in and he should have the right to continue with his sign.
Somebody needs to clarify when this lease expires, because my information here says that it expires in early 2018, that it would have been passed, so,
I believe the copy I
Okay,
read said
that's-
19.
okay,
it's
that's
supposed
a
to be
typo
19.
I believe that's
under
a typo.
background on the cover sheet.
Right here.
That's 18.
In my thing, yeah, that's the type.
I read the actual agreement, and it was 19.
February, okay.
And like I said, I want to look at the sign ordinance. I want to find a way to make this work. My issue is with the document. I don't believe that we can sign that document and do it with integrity. I don't. So I wish there were another way to get it done.
The wording
and
of
I
the-
understand what you're doing, or what's happening here is you're saying it's all or nothing. And if you want this to happen, then do this regardless. And I don't think that that's a fair way to look at it.
One point that you raised is, I mean, and I have looked into it a little. I don't want to profess that I've made a deep, in-depth study throughout the whole state about this, but based on, a few calls I've made, this is a decision that gets made many times really much lower level within the city. Somebody just signs off on it without even giving it any thought at all. I'm not saying that's right, but we are devoting, raising this up to a high level of decision within the city, when it's generally a routine administrative decision.
I can see how that's true, but not where it's on city property in
Yeah,
a lease.
That is a distinction, sure.
Right, because if you guys were to say today to me, go sign the certification, and then we can't agree on a new lease, but in the meantime, the petitioner goes to the expense of doing the tree removal, then I think we've messed up, right? So, because of the circumstance of the lease, to me, the certification is not the question. Although Councilman McDougal has huge issues with it, I understand that, but my point is, if you don't resolve the lease issue first, even if you tell me to sign the certification, you've still not put the petitioner in a good place.
I'd like to see us renew the lease, because I think there's real mitigating factors with the city okaying this and okaying that, and then all of a sudden we switch laws on people. Oops. Okay, now what you have isn't okay, even though you've spent all that money. And guess what? We have another way for you to spend some more money to conform, or not conform, because you can't conform. So you have to just take it down. I'd like to see us renew the lease.
So if you decide as a group to renew the lease, but don't let me sign the certification, he still doesn't have a viable
Right.
sign.
But you said we needed to address the lease issue first.
I think so, but if you're telling me that you agree with Councilman McDougal and that you're not going to authorize me to sign the certification, then I think you're telling the petitioner he's got to take the sign down still. So there is no renewing the lease.
Unless he elects to keep the sign at the same height it is.
But he can't cut
But
the
it won't
trees.
be seen.
Cut the trees down.
No, he couldn't cut the trees
It
down.
won't be
but-
seen.
The sign
You
becomes
have a
useless.
viable sign.
Yes, useless then. Trees block the sign, you don't see the sign.
I don't like the wording
There's a
on
lot of
it,
those in here,
but I'm
Douglasville.
basing it on your explanation and that it's a GDOT form, and government does a really lousy job at doing some things.
If you drive.
I would authorize you to sign the form.
I would too.
I think the wording, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but
If you drive between here and Douglasville in the wintertime and look out into the woods, you'll see a lot of signs buried in the trees. Trees overgrow them, so the signs become totally useless.
and we don't have to worry about new signs because we're all built out. No new signs are coming in because they have to be spaced. None of them would fit the current criteria. So no new signs are coming into Villa Rica. On the interstate, I'm sorry.
We have discussed this thoroughly. If there's any more discussion, we'll talk about it, and the applicant will be here next Tuesday night, so if you have any questions of him, I certainly would love to hear that question answered about whether he would like to continue with the billboard at that height, if that's an option that the council so desires, so.
Well, wait a minute, before we leave the subject, if we authorize you to sign the agreement, the certification, it just allows him to cut trees so that he can use that sign. He's still gonna have his lease run out February, and that's when you still gonna have to negotiate a new lease if he wants to keep the sign. So that's when you would, do these things you staff recommended. Right?
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Item number 2, seasonal workers to replace Douglas County inmate crew.
All right, so I'm bringing you two related but different decisions here because they both require a budget amendment, and I didn't want to do the arithmetic but once, especially when I was doing it. So we have lost the Douglas County inmate crew, at least more than temporarily. We're hearing that they're short 26 people. So the guy that was running our crew has been reassigned, and I don't see that being reversed in the foreseeable future. So that's 6 people that were doing maintenance that we've lost. So I'm looking at the money, and I'm thinking that it would make sense for us to add 3 more seasonal workers to the 3 that are already in the budget. So we're going to be down 3 guys net of that. But Stephanie's already processing 3 seasonal workers that are in our normal operation. So we don't have to advertise again. We've already advertised. We already have a pool of candidates. We would just add 3 more positions. In addition, we have had numerous conversations one-on-one about code enforcement. When I got here, we had 3 part-time code people who were working somewhere during the 8 to 5 Monday to Friday time frame. Since I've been here, one of them retired, and Bobby has pretty much absconded with one of them. And so he's got one of them pretty much dedicated to soil and erosion control inspection, which is legit because residential development is picked up. We've got some commercial development. We have a long track record of not doing a good job of inspection, so we have a lot of non-compliance on silt fence and dirt leaving the site. And if I were to tell you the developments that are doing it, you would go, yeah, because these are all names you know, I'm not going to mention. So what I'm recommending in addition to the seasonal is that we abolish the 3 part-time positions and create 3 full-time positions that are different. So one of them would be Monday to Friday, 8 to 5 soil and erosion control. One would be Tuesday to Saturday. One would be Sunday to Thursday. And what that does is gives us code enforcement 7 days a week. If we create the jobs that way and hire them that way, then there's no beef. I can't do it the other way, I don't think, because if we create 8 to 5 Monday to Friday jobs and then I try to make one of them work on Saturday and one on Sunday, I'll get mutiny. Okay? So I want to do it that way to begin with. So if we don't get 3, then that doesn't work. So that's why I'm recommending 3, because I talked to a couple of y'all and we were talking about just doing 2, but that doesn't meet Bobby's requirement, and it doesn't meet the requirement for weekend coverage, which is really, I think, when we have more acute behavior, the illegal signs and you know, guys selling stuff and all that, more so goes on the weekend because they know we don't have anybody around, right? To pay for this, we would be able to reduce the expense that we budgeted for inmates a little bit, because we're obviously not going to be paying for inmates for the rest of the year. And then we also have more building permit revenue than we budgeted coming in, just like we have more water and sewer tap revenue coming in than we budgeted. And so I'm recommending that we move that we increase that to offset the increase in the expense. So 2 things are going to happen. One is we're going to pick up 3 sets of benefits that we haven't been paying, plus more hours. And we are effectively increasing next year's budget because this is a 9-month thing that we're only picking up for 5 months, and it's going to be 12 months next year. So it'll have a sort of a ripple effect in the next budget. But I think operationally, based on what y'all are complaining about and telling me your concerns, that this is a step to rectify that.
How much is it gonna cost us this year? Says you got to increase the budget or amend the budget.
I think we're increasing, let's say, 53 grand on
53.3.
53.3.
reducing the inmate expense account 11.
So total, how much is it 53 is what you would be asking then?
53 and 11 is really the additional expense, and then next year would be, I don't even know how to do that in my head, but it'd be more than that in the next budget because it'd be 5 months this year and 12 months next year.
And it's 12 months, everything from salaries to, like you say, health insurance, retirement account. Deduct.
We have two guys in those positions, and so they would both be allowed to apply for these 2 full-time situations. So Stephanie would post it internally and externally at the same time, and those 2 guys would be able to apply.
So the main reason you think we need 3 is to cover those days. Not, we couldn't do 2 full-time, we need, I'm trying to say, and I know need with code enforcement, because some of us are, this has been a big deal for several years, better code enforcement, better code. And a lot of the complaints, when you even say we're complaining, half the time I'm typing in stuff people are bringing to me. There are other citizens that are tired of what's going on next door to them or across the street from them. We could use 3 and keep them busy.
Just to give you an example, where I
because one
came from, we had 4 full-time, plus a supervisor. So we're hardly overstaffed on the code side with 3 part-time people, and even 3 full-time people with the amount of commercial and residential development we have is not too much.
Gosh, it's hard to lose those inmates. I mean, the inmate crews have been so helpful.
The 3 inmate
That's
crews
the other.
are 18 people, and if we were to replace that with 18 full-time folks at 13.25 plus benefits, it's like $750,000, and we're paying 50 or 60 grand per crew. So we're paying about 1/4 of what it would cost us to staff it internally.
So we will only have 2 inmate crews,
Right.
or we have.
Have the 2 Carroll crews. And I think we went and picked up the van already. So we've gone to Douglas and picked up the van because they're not using it.
That was my question. Did we buy a van for that crew? Or we just kind of,
Carroll. We bought a new van and gave the older van to Carroll for the second crew because we were providing one, they were providing one. Now we provide both. So now we have an extra van,
well,
at least temporarily.
we're still going to have 3 seasonal people though, right? Separate from the code people? Wait,
We'll have 6 total. We have 3 in the current budget, and I'm asking to add 3 to replace the
Create-
inmate.
create positions for 3 seasonal workers and 3 code enforcement.
Is there a way we could still get the boot camp crew from Douglas County?
Boot camp?
Talk about your theory. I mean, you can tell them what you're thinking, and we'll pursue that. But other than you telling me, I had no idea that was.
All right, Charlie, help me out now. We have people in the city, and you're one of them, that went to class and are certified to carry prisoners to do work in the city. My question to the city manager was, do they have that same responsibility in Douglas County? That a person could go, be certified, and actually carry the prisoners, one, to ever how many they wanted, to go do some type of work with the city. Okay, all right, thank you. Just the thought was there were several people that could have been gone to get 2 or 3 people to go to Pine Mountain to work, to go cut the grass, whatever. And maybe one of these seasonal people or one of the street department people could go do that. Obviously don't work.
I would just encourage you, having done that for many, many years, that is a tremendous liability that you're placing on an employee when they're supervising inmates, number one. Number two, you have basically tied up that employee's time for the entire day. They can't go to lunch. They have to stay with that inmate crew from start to finish. So just understand that if we ever elect to do that, having been put in that situation, that you have basically tied up that employee's day all day long.
It would be the same ratio of expense and savings if we would have to actually create a new position and fund it for the guard, but we would get for that money $250,000 worth of benefit compared to hiring.
I agree for a guard. I'm just talking about using our
So we could
folks
do
out.
it with our current,
Right.
we'd have to add a position to do that.
Any other questions on seasonal workers to replace the Douglas County inmate crew? And seasonal workers. Okay, item number 3, professional services agreement with Jasmine Jackson.
All right, back in October, November, I came to you with a request to fund a contract with Michael Knotts, who we had met through an interview. He was out of school, had a degree in GIS, was looking for something related to his master's degree, and we brought him in for a couple of months while he was job hunting. He helped us with GIS and got a lot of things assimilated into one place on the server, which has helped us tremendously down the road. Since Bobby got here, we bought a new plotter. We've been able to produce some maps that have helped us. So we need to do that again, and Michael has recommended a young lady that he worked with at Oak Ridge who has a similar background. And the reason he recommended her is she wanted to move to Atlanta for her next job, and so she's going to be job hunting. She's moving here the end of this month, is available May the 7th. I'd like to bring her in on the same contract arrangement. This time Bobby's been here for 5 months, so he'll be able to better utilize her because he's been in the data some and is a lot farther along in getting the department under control. Her name is Jasmine Jackson. She's a young lady who I've not spent a lot of time with, but according to Michael, these are his words, right? And y'all know what I thought of Michael. Michael just said to me, she's a whole lot sharper than I am, right? So that was as far as I got, right? So I'm relying on Michael. He worked with her, so that's my recommendation.
Questions, comments?
What cubby hole you gonna put her in?
I think I'm gonna put her in your office.
That'd be fine. As long as we get my table back, we'll be okay.
That's a long story.
He brought it up earlier today, the table.
No, it started many years ago,
We can
trust
put
me.
it out there by the drive-through.
She do it away. Oh, well.
All right, any other questions on item number 3? Item number 4?
All right, one more. I brought to council a request some time ago about applying to GDOT for lighting on the bridge at exit 24. They responded in February with a letter that gave us 3 options on how to proceed. Behind that is staff agreement on GDOT's part with the request. We've had 18 accidents on the bridge in the last 2 years, which they consider unacceptably high for that amount of traffic. They believe that lighting would have a significant safety impact on the bridge. So the question before council is, do we want this so bad, so soon, that we're willing to put $1 million of our own money in it? And my recommendation to you is, the answer to that is no. So we have two choices. We can either apply for the project through their annual lighting budget, which would put us at a construction of 2022, or we can apply for STIP money, which is how the North Loop is funded, if I can say that out loud. And the possibility exists that we could get the project done sooner, like maybe in 2 years or 3 years, as opposed to 4. So that'd be my recommendation, is we ask them to put us in the STIP funding, talk to the staff and see if that's a good idea or not, and if not, then we drop back and we just try to get into the regular lighting program. And I mentioned in the cover sheet that although safety is the reason for doing this, one of the added benefits to having lighting there is it generally attracts more interstate traffic off the highway onto 61 if you have a well-lit, attractive interchange, which would help our businesses there. That's a secondary purpose, but I think a potential benefit.
Okay. Any questions?
What'd you say?
I don't have any issue with the recommendation of applying for STIP, and if that don't work out, then, but is it possible to do both at the same time? Might be worth looking at.
Tom, I don't know where I want to put these, but you and I had talked about it this week, so I'm just going to throw these out here, and we can talk if you want to put them on the agenda for discussion next Tuesday or what. But the Gateway landscape, you know, we can do all we want to about our infrastructure in town, but the city looks really bad from a landscape standpoint. And so I had asked Tom and we met yesterday with Tommy McLeod, who installed the Gateway landscapes on Highway 61, and he gave us a proposal to get those back looking good again. And so I don't know, maybe we put that on the council agenda and talk about it next Tuesday. That's one item. We had also talked about doing an RFQ, which is a request for qualifications, which does not involve money, but it does involve pre-qualifying companies to come in and give us a quote on how much they would charge to maintain our intensive landscapes throughout the city, namely the parks, the entrance signs with a seasonal color, the areas that we would fertilize, put out pre-emergent weed control and those kind of things. So I would like to see that on the agenda for next Tuesday for discussion. Or just for the council. I guess this will just be an authorization for the council to authorize you to solicit for an RFQ, which again does not involve money. It just pre-qualifies companies. We have all, or several of us anyway, have received complaints about tractor trailers in the industrial park being parked on both sides of the road overnight, and residents sending photographs of truckers using the restroom out in front of the trucks, and the folks going back and forth to Print Pack, seeing that. And also there's a safety concern because of the lack of visibility. So I would like that to be put on the agenda for next Tuesday for discussion. Also some good news. It appears that we have at least submitted a grant application to Norfolk Southern for a grant for our police department. So we've been putting up with training issues for the last year and a half, so it's a good thing that maybe we may be getting something back for the police department from Norfolk Southern. So hopefully by next Tuesday I'll know about that, so we'll just kind of stand in lurch on that one. And then last but certainly not least, I know, Tom, you've had this complaint, and a couple of council have. We have a very serious situation with the traffic on Industrial Boulevard at the entrance to Sugar Foods, Print Pack, our large industries. That is a dangerous intersection and very hard for people to get out, in and out of there, especially with all the truck traffic to and fro. I know we had talked about the possibility of GDOT looking at a roundabout there. So can you just give us an update next Tuesday with that, if that's something that we're still looking at? Because that is a potentially serious situation right there. as are the other situations that are. So, thank you for indulging me on those additions. Okay, we have reached the public comments portion of the meeting. Anyone wishing to give public comment, please do so at this time. Come forward, state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Mayor and City Council, Mr. Barber, Mr. Mecklin, my name's Alan Gaston. I live 403 Shady Valley Drive, Carrollton. 18 years ago, I spent $100,000 on a billboard structure on the City of Villa Rica's property, on a piece of property that's pretty much landlocked with the Department of Transportation and a creek, and it's just, I don't see any use that'll ever be used for anything else. And just last year, I spent that same amount of money buying a partner out that was a partner with me on that structure and got it financed out for 20 years. 18 years ago, I spent $20,000 on building a bridge and clearing out the land to put the billboard structure because you couldn't even get to the structure because of all the water that was around it. The only thing the city has to do to maintain it is to cut the grass. The city already cuts the the sewage and water easement, and I'm right off of that, and they cut about 50 yards with the bush hog while they're already there, you know, doing the easements for the sewage and water. 18 years ago, I worked out a lease with the city manager, which was Steve Russell at that time. I wanted to get a longer lease, but he said, don't worry about it, I'll be here forever. What I've approached to the city is that I'm trying to save $55,000 and having to lower the structures on the Dobbs property and the City of Villa Rica's property by signing that form. I would like for the motions to read, motion 1, I agree to sign the form. Motion 2, I disagree on signing the form. So the form is, you know, either in or out. As far as the lease, I'd like to sit down with the city manager to work out a lease, and the lease is not a decision of yes or no. It's what is going to be in the lease. You know, what we work out, you know, how much the money is or that type of thing. Because of losing this structure would be devastating to my company, because it's pretty much the best structure I have of all the structures in my company. It's going to cost $76,000 to cut the trees and purchase the trees that are on the right of way. I was trying to save that $55,000 to go toward that. I can cut the trees and lower the structure to 75 feet and pay, you know, $55,000 you know, to lower it. Or I can wait for the Department of Transportation is cutting from fence to fence on the right of way now, or they lose, you know, federal dollars. They've already cut from Alabama to Tallapoosa, and if you look around, they've cut, you know, I-75, I-85 to 285, you know, those different areas. I just wanting to save that money of lowering the structure to help, because it's such an expensive process, and buying the trees, because that money goes to the Gateway program of what, you know, you get beautification at 61 and 78 and different other places. So I would like for the motions to be the yes or no on the sign the document and leave the lease with Mr. Barber and I, and then the city to vote on what's inside the lease. So we should consider my thoughts in your meeting Tuesday.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we will proceed with the consent agenda. So, let's see, we vote on the minutes. Tab B, we have to talk about 1. B2. B3? B4?
I'm sorry, hold on, I was under A. What, B2?
Start all over.
Refund of duplicate water fees, we don't need to talk about that.
That's what I thought, but I wouldn't. Everybody okay with that? Okay.
B2's.
B2.
B2, okay.
B3, we gotta talk about, that'll be a discussion item, right?
I think that goes into
Executive session, David?
Yes.
We'll move that
would
to
be
executive session.
Executive session.
B4. We'll need a vote on that. Tab C, item 1, financial update, we'll hear that. Amendment to ordinance providing for better collection, we'll have to hear that. Will there be a public hearing on that, David, or no?
No, you could consider that in the,
Consent?
yeah, it's a consent item.
Okay.
Consent.
So item C2 will be consent. C3?
Consent.
It's renewal and it's less than last year and we gotta have it.
C4?
I have no issues with consent.
Should people see those project lists though?
I think y'all need to talk about that.
Okay. Tab D1, need to talk about that, right? D2, this is, you said that was a discussion item. D3,
Consent.
okay.
The health scope?
Is that a vote?
The health plan document. You're basically just accepting it. I'm just not,
Yeah, and it seems like it's really pretty much just an explanation so that people understand, so that employees understand their benefits.
Right.
Right.
it is a policy decision. Because we detail in there what is and is not covered. How much, how many dollars worth of wigs can you get in a year? I mean, it's very detailed.
What is your,
I've looked at it. I think that you could put it on the consent agenda if you choose to. I mean, it is so complicated, I don't see that you're gonna be able to discuss it.
We met and worked on it, Stephanie, Sarah, and I, and Wendell, how many times? How many months?
I'm just waiting for Councilman McPherson to tell me whether she wants it on the consent
A
agenda or
lot of
not.
time on
It's
it.
103 pages. My main thing is just I gotta make sure I read through every bit of it.
So what is your,
I'm okay with consent.
okay. All right, tab E1, preventive maintenance contract for lift stations.
Consent.
Got to have.
Okay.
Item E2, construction of 2 dumpster pads, and I think we probably need to discuss that based on what I heard. Okay. Item E3, construction of traffic islands on West Wilson Street.
Okay with that. Consent.
Yeah, we just need to correct the cover sheet.
Excellent.
All right. Tab F1, library proof of loss form. We were told that was for information. Advisory committee appointment, we will vote on that, and then that person will be sworn in at the next meeting. Okay. Tab G1,
I think with the expense, I think that should be public. Isn't it like 130,000 or something?
31.
that's a big one. Jim spends lots of money.
I think we pulled 2 last time that were 4 something and 80, so that would be consistent.
Okay. All right, so we leave that, we will discuss that. Tab H, 1, that will be discussion. We'll talk about that in other words. H2, seasonal workers to replace the Douglas County inmate crew
And code enforcement.
and code enforcement. Probably need to talk about that. H3, professional services agreement with Jasmine Jackson. What was that? I'm sorry.
Consent.
Consent?
I'm still on H2.
Mayor wanted to talk about it.
No, I don't.
I want to consent it, but I don't mind talking about
That's what I'm saying. I'm wondering why we're going to talk about, we beat it to death 45 minutes a while ago.
No, I didn't say. I just added the word code enforcement. So if y'all want to put it on consent agenda, you know.
You're talking H2?
Yeah.
With hiring all those additional people?
You need them.
I mean, that is necessary.
Well, I'm not
you
saying
haven't
it's
gotten
not
them.
necessary.
Put them good.
Are we keeping,
David, how about if we write it up as a budget amendment ordinance and bring it back, have them vote on it?
I think that would be good.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're hiring all those people, I just kind of thought.
So it's not on consent agenda.
Not on consent.
Okay.
It's going to change.
Sorry,
Fixed it.
Councilman.
We're not bunched in with the consent.
It's going to change.
If we.
Yes, ma'am. I've been asking.
We'll get
Move
it.
along, y'all. We got to move along. I got to. Tab H. The items that I asked for were the gateway landscape, which will be a discussion item. The RFQ for the intense maintenance, that will also be a discussion item. Tractor trailers and industrial park will be a discussion item. Hopefully, the grant from Norfolk Southern will be a reality by then. Number 9, the thing that I added was the intersection at Industrial Boulevard and Industrial Park. And Tom, again, all I would ask there is, would you get with GDOT and see where they are in that process? So,
Is that a state highway?
yes, that portion.
101.
And I think it would also be, as I understand it, it was perhaps quick response type of stuff because the right of way is all GDOT.
Okay.
So that may be one that we can actually move forward. All right, so here are the items that I have for consent agenda. Tab B2, Tab C2, Tab C3, I'm sorry.
Give it, Mr. Mayor.
Tab
Did
D.
we talk
What about H3?
H4? No, H4.
I haven't got the H yet.
No, he said, she has.
No, I'm just saying, we were discussing, when you were doing the consent agenda, did you do H4? That's all I'm asking.
Did we do 3, Jasmine Jackson?
Yeah,
Yes, we did
passed
that.
Okay.
I did not do H4, thank
Yeah,
you, ma'am.
that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Did
We didn't decide which way to do
Okay.
it, though.
Yeah, we didn't, so we
There's
got to
three
talk
options.
about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, back to where we were. Back.
Okay, yeah, back up.
D3, then E1, E3, and then H3.
Bingo.
Bingo.
Everybody see it that way?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything anybody else wants to add?
You are going to add an executive session on to the end.
All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank y'all. Thank you all for being here.
Hey, Jeff, I missed part of those discussion items that you wanted